This is another video I'm going to play for you because I often talk a lot about, appreciate that support, Kay. I often talk a lot about abuse, and I often hear people tell me that men, particularly black men, can't experience it, which is absolute garbage. But in the meantime, please support the show. We got 250 watching. Like, share, subscribe, join, become a member, and support if you will. Would definitely be appreciated. Let me go ahead and pull this up. This I ran across on Facebook earlier this week. And it is, this version I got didn't have any sound, but it is of a wife who has a pot of boiling water that she is pouring on her sleeping husband and then whipping him with a belt, right? Accusing him of infidelity. Now, one of the interesting things I notice in these conversations that tend to come up between men and women and relationships is that somehow, when it comes to infidelity, this is acceptable. This is somehow okay. People don't seem to have a problem with this, as if for some reason, people are laughing at the video, making fun of him. John, appreciate that generous support. Thank you. People laugh, people make jokes about it. It's dismissive, it's funny. But the funny part is, if you reverse the genders, there wouldn't be a laugh going on anywhere, at least not publicly, right? This husband comes in with a pot of boiling water, pours it on his sleeping wife, and then begins to beat her with a belt. Whole different reaction, right? And we've said this time and time again, people do not really know how to empathize with black men. And a lot of that, if you've read Dr. Tommy Curry's The Man Not, goes back to really the slavery era, the 19th century, most particularly in regard to how ethnologists would frame and describe black men, mostly as children or lesser beings. And of course, that evolves into the 20th century, into criminals and rapists. But either way, an inhumane perspective that is baked into the national imagination about who black men are, what they are fundamentally, and what they are capable of. And if nothing else, it adds up to a concoction that is void of empathy. So when you see these kind of videos where men are attacked by their spouses, it's considered justifiable, if anything. And the first question I notice people tend to ask, and overwhelmingly it tends to be women, is what he must have done. And the argument is somehow laden with this idea that he deserved what happened, even if we don't know the reason. Her accusations somehow serve as judgment. No reflection, no evidence required. She suspects it, ergo, it must have happened, and he must have deserved it. But here's the thing, even if there was infidelity involved, that still doesn't justify that. I mean, think about that, right? Yet again, I use the same scenario. You have a woman who has been caught cheating. Even in that case, if you saw a video where she has been caught cheating and the husband begins to beat her, do people regard that as acceptable because she was caught? Usually not. This type of entitlement has really, in my assessment, caused too many problems. And it's gotten to such a fever pitch that there are many women that don't even see their acts as abusive. They don't see other women's acts as abusive. This is all acceptable. And the argument somehow becomes that, if men have a problem with it, they just need to start acting better. Not that the abuse needs to stop. And again, if men respond in kind, then that is abuse. See, that's the interesting part to it. If this gentleman had gotten out of bed and began to physically strike her, that would be considered abuse. Not only in terms of what the wife would bring to the police department, but what people watching the video would say. So nothing prior to that is abuse, but if he responds, it's abuse. But just in case you think this is just something that I'm making up, because again, I've heard everything from men that I've talked to academics who argue that black men can't be abused. Here's another.
His car broke down. He's spending the night over his friends. Oh, so he was with you all night? Oh, okay. Okay, well, yeah, he has a whole girlfriend. Uh-huh. Yes, I'm his girlfriend. Yeah, and he has you saved in his phone? as Chick-fil-A. Yes. No, just do a favor. Don't call him no more, because he might be dead. All right. Thanks.
Now, in case you couldn't make out what was being said, this was a woman who was on the phone with another woman as her boyfriend or husband, I'm not sure which, was asleep. And as she was on the phone talking to another woman, the other woman claimed that he had spent the night with her, telling his girlfriend that his car broke down. He had her listed in his phone as Chick-fil-A. So as she's talking to the woman, she's wrapping a belt around his neck. And, then she proceeds to tell the woman never to call back, and then wakes him up by choking him with the belt. Now, we've seen these kind of things popularized in movies, most particularly, Tyler Perry kind of movies, black film, most particularly. So it's really one of the only industries where I see a lot of this abuse happening a lot, but posted as comedies, right? Or some type of righteously vindictive narrative that's applauded in theaters, or at least when we were in theaters, right? Now, I don't know if this is real. I have been fooled before, but my case with these is not necessarily anymore whether or not a given video is real, but more so what it celebrates and what it promotes. Now, I tend to believe that this particular incident is more than likely real, but that aside, either way, this is absolutely inhumane and unacceptable, right? But it's far more acceptable to the rank and file, everyday folk who seem to think that this is something to celebrate, right? And it's absolutely ridiculous. But again, if he got up and he began to respond in kind, only that would be considered abuse. One of the things I noticed too, if you watch Kevin Samuel's show, one of the things that he runs across a great deal are women who will talk to him about having been abused. And I know one of the things I noticed he did a couple months ago, he started asking them, did you file a police report? And I had a chance to talk to him privately. And one of the things he shared with me is he started asking the question because the accusations were so rampant, but the idea was somehow that, there was nothing preceding this. This guy just walked in, she's baking cookies. He picks up a baseball bat and goes to town just because it's Tuesday, right? But what you tend to find, according to the data, especially in regard to the Black community, is that intimate partner violence is bidirectional, almost equal in terms of it being initiated from men to women and women to men. It's almost equal, right? These are the things we're not often told, right? So when you begin to look at the data, you begin to see that. Now, and the other week, last week, I pointed out the number of deaths as a result of intimate partner homicide. And you'll find against the population of 43 odd million Black folk, you're really talking about, 200 women, 170 men on a given year. Obviously, those numbers change, but for the most part, that's the ratio. So against stereotype, no, Black men are not killing Black women in mass in terms of abuse and homicide. And when it comes to violence, the violence is bidirectional. Appreciate the support, Barry Little, right? The violence is bidirectional. It's equal, one side to the other. So but see, what isn't equal is that we have on one side an attitude that women should not be touched, should not be violently engaged. And that's absolutely the case. That's what I don't think human beings should live in situations where they have to experience violence, especially in their own homes. Don't have a problem with that. But when it comes to men, we somehow just kind of walk away like there's nothing to be seen here. Now, I reported on a case in the last couple of weeks. I've recorded, you guys know I report on a few of these cases where you've had husbands being abused. And there was another case, I even put it up as a solo video, where the woman poured boiling hot water on her boyfriend and sat there and laughed. And in that case, they didn't even give a motive for it. She watched the skin fall off his body and he had to drive himself to the hospital. Any widespread scream about it? Any mass movement to acknowledge? No, none of that. Again, it's considered acceptable. So I just showed you two cases back to back, caught on video. And if you go look at the comments in social media on those, you find people mostly laughing. I find it unacceptable. And this is why I push, as a Black male justice advocate, for us to begin to really push a policy that addresses the particularities of Black men's experiences despite how much they're ignored. Because being ignored has nothing to do with it. Now, this one, case I'm about to read you, involves somebody that you're already quite familiar with, but you may not have known about this. This is a very old situation. Now, Eddie Murphy's going to come up again a little later in a whole different context, but at least as far as this one is concerned, I'm just finding out about this particular case. Now, apparently in Rolling Stone years ago, Eddie Murphy did an interview where he talked about his biological father. Now, I saw Eddie on Saturday Night Live honor his father, who was sitting in the audience. Turned out that was his stepfather. About his biological father, he says, his father was killed in 1969. And in the Rolling Stones, he says, my mother and father broke up when I was 3 and he died when I was 8. So I have very dim memories. He was a victim of the Murphy charm. And then he laughed. Said a woman stabbed my father. I never got all the logistics. It was supposed to be one of those crimes of passion. If I can't have you, no one else will kind of deal. Yeah. So again, this is not new. These kind of cases are not new. To what extent do we talk about them? To what extent are they a part of our national conversation? To what extent do you sit in classrooms where the assault on males and victims of intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide are discussed? How many of you have actually been in a college class where that's been the subject? See, I hope you have, because I haven't. I went to school, higher education from 1992 to 2008. Not once did I ever have any class discussion or assignment that dealt with the experiences of men and particularly their vulnerabilities in regard to abuse. Never. So one of the brightest stars that we've seen in Hollywood, right, hasn't seen his father since he was 8, behind a murder that even he knows very little about. And nobody has a problem with that. Appreciate the support, Alpha Sigma. I definitely do. I definitely have a problem with that. Right? Now this one, I'm just going to leave up for you to peruse. I will, of course, read it to my innerlightradio.com audience. This is a meme that just has a picture of Cardi B. It says, just your yearly reminder that Cardi B admitted to drugging and robbing men, and no one cares. And what's left out is allegedly also either raping them or having friends do so. Sexual violation taking place alongside drugging and robbing men. You tell me. I mean, I just want to just take a moment of silence, have you look at that, make sure that we keep that in memory, because it is what it is.